Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video. So in this video we're going to be covering off how Far Cry 6 works on Google Stadia now that it's finally here. There's been some mixed reception and there's some things leading up to it where people were kind of getting frustrated with it. But we're going to dive into our experience using on a mobile phone, a tablet, and then obviously on the big screen, just to give you an idea of how the thing works in terms of performance. We'll go a little bit into gameplay like we normally do, but it's more about the performance that you can expect to get using Google Stadia and cloud gaming. So let's get on with it, shall we? So first up, let's address the elephant in the room, which is the 30 frames per second. So in the lead up to Far Cry 6 coming out for Google Stadia, there was a lot of buzz about the fact that it would be capped out at 30 frames per second, whether you're playing on the lower resolutions or at 4K, which is, to be honest, a bit of a shame. I am quite happy to say that it's a really solid 30 frames per second, and compared to some of the other forums where they're talking about things like GeForce Now, where it's a kind of stuttery between 30 and 60 frames per second, it seems pretty good. I've got to say, using on a mobile phone and a tablet, it wasn't quite as noticeable as I was expecting it to do, and I am somebody who is used to 60 frames per second gameplay as like a minimum, so I kind of thought it was going to be a lot more jarring than it actually was. But to be fair, I barely noticed it. Now, one thing I will say is I'm probably trained myself to not really notice it too much when I'm doing things like cloud gaming, just because there is that added latency, so I don't see those things quite as much. And these things will vary from person to person. You might be somebody who really notices it and it's just an absolute deal breaker, or you might be somebody, I guess, like myself, who doesn't notice it quite as much. But I will say it wasn't as noticeable as I was expecting it, so well, that isn't the deal breaker. Far Cry 6 has a far more issues, in my opinion, than the 30 frames per second, at least on Stadia anyway, so we'll go into those. So first up, how does it run on a mobile phone and does it fit that screen? So as always, I was using the iPhone 11 Pro Max, so that gives you an idea of what sort of screen size that I'm using. And first things first, the user interface and the text and everything else actually looks pretty good. I really thought I was going to struggle after going from my iPad to then playing it on a mobile phone. I thought it would be really small and hard to see everything that was happening in terms of the actual text on screen, but it was always pretty clear and I didn't really have to squint too much. However, I think it's just borderline. If I was using a smaller phone than the 11 Pro Max, I think it would be a real struggle to see some of the on-screen prompts or the user interface or just some of the text that's on there. So just bear that in mind. It's just about okay, but I think it would be a real struggle at a smaller screen the size than something like the iPhone 11 Pro Max. The game itself looks really good on a mobile phone, and you kind of expect that too on the smaller screen, so no complaints there. And the lack of a field of view slider, although it does become an issue on other devices, is perfectly fine on a mobile phone. Again, I don't really feel the need to be able to change that. Going back to the 30 frames per second on a mobile phone, it was barely noticeable, and again, it's the way that you kind of come to expect it on a mobile phone. It's cloud gaming, so there's latency and there's those bits there. It all looks really good. It's really smooth gameplay. I didn't notice the 30 frames per second on a mobile phone. The one thing that makes Far Cry 6, in my opinion, unplayable on the phone is it's just too cramped. So when I got into combat areas and trying to spot enemies, I could barely make them out. They were just far too small. There weren't really any indicators. And obviously other games, and mobile games especially, will kind of compensate for that smaller screen size, and they'll make those enemies a bit clearer. On Far Cry 6, I could barely ever see what I was actually shooting, and I kind of just randomly shot at things and hoped for the best. And then certain on-screen prompts were a little bit too small, like where you have to get your random crocodile to go and get people. I wasn't really sure what was happening or where people were, so that became an issue. The other issue that Far Cry 6 has on Google Stadia, and I found this across at least the iPad and my iPhone, is everything in the foreground looks really clear and crisp and the graphics look fantastic, but anything that's, I don't know, just a few steps away from your character looks quite blurry. And I don't know what that is. It's the first time I've seen it, and it must be the way they're trying to compensate to get that solid 30 frames per second. That seems crazy saying to try and get a solid 30 frames per second, but they're doing something where anything that's not in your immediate foreground is quite blurry. So couple that with the fact that actually enemies look really small, it's quite a busy game, there's a lot going on, and anything that's further away from you that you're trying to shoot at is quite blurry, it becomes a bit of a mess on a mobile phone. So my experience is, even though it was running really solidly, I was getting that solid 30 frames per second, I didn't really have any latency issues and the performance was really good, it just doesn't fit on a mobile phone. And my 11 Pro Max is one of the biggest phones that you can get, so anything smaller would just be absolutely unplayable. For me, I couldn't handle anything in combat when I was playing on a phone just because I couldn't make out what the hell was going on at any given time. So if you're looking to play Far Cry 6 on a mobile phone and it's the only way you can play it, I would say give it a miss and try to play it on a bigger device if you can do. It's too busy, and the way they're doing things just doesn't quite work at least in my experience. So moving across onto tablets, and again, I was using the iPad Pro, the 12.9 version, so that'll give you an idea of the screen size that I was using. Now this, again, looks really good. It does look distinctly last generation, so all the advertisements of, you know, next gen gameplay and graphics and everything else, it certainly didn't blow me away in how it looked, especially compared to things like trailers or from what I've seen from PC gameplay and graphics. The graphics, they look really good, but like I said, it doesn't blow me away. It's distinctly in that last generation console graphics, in my opinion anyway, what I was seeing on the iPad. Now, that doesn't really take away from the gameplay. It's still a really smooth experience. I was getting a very smooth 30 frames per second. It worked really well. I had no crashes or no issues. Text and user interface was much better on the iPad, as you'd expect. You can see things a lot more. It was easier to navigate the menus and stuff like that. I had no issues, and the controller worked fantastically well, and it's all just really well optimized in that respect. One thing that I found almost straight away playing this game, and I don't know if it's because I didn't have a field of view slider, is it was quite a nauseating experience. So I kind of almost got motion sickness playing Far Cry 6 when it was on my iPad. Now that could be the 30 frames per second, and I've just not really kind of thought of that too much, or it could be the fact that I'm just so zoomed in on what my character's seeing. But it was almost, I don't know, a little bit like I was playing in VR and I was coming away from it and I wasn't overly impressed in that respect. So to sit further away from the device would just be annoying because you're obviously further away and things are a lot smaller. And the iPad has exactly the same problem as the iPhone does. So everything in the foreground looks really clear, but anything more than a few steps away from your character is quite blurry and just out of focus. It's almost like, I don't know, if you need glasses and you take your glasses off and you just can't see what's going on further away from you. That's what Far Cry 6 feels like playing it on Google Stadia. Everything in the immediate foreground looks great. It's really crisp, it's really focused, but anything further away from your character is just a little bit blurry, out of focus, and that makes combat really difficult. So just like the iPhone, it was difficult when you got into those combat situations. Not quite as difficult because obviously you've got more screen real estate, so you can make out things a little bit more, but the fact that it's quite a small screen, I guess, and again, the game doesn't really compensate for that too much, and you wouldn't expect it to. But it's a busy game, there's a lot going on, characters are blending into the background, and then they're kind of out of focus. It makes it a very, in my opinion, not great experience. So if you are in the boat where you are looking to play Far Cry 6 on just a tablet, bear that in mind. In my opinion, if it's the only way you can play this game, and it is the game that you really want to play, then you could just about get away with it if you're happy with that field of view being locked in real close, and you're happy with the fact that things just aren't quite in focus and don't look next gen like you'd want it to. Then I guess it's one way to play the game if it's the only way you can play it. In my opinion though, it's not worth it. I just came away feeling a little bit sick. It was hard to focus on things, and just the combat and everything was just a little bit too busy for that size of screen. Moving on to the big screen, and things did look a lot better, and obviously this is the way the game is meant to be played, and Ubisoft clearly haven't really done too much to make it fit onto a tablet or a mobile phone, and that's not a dig at them at all. Obviously this is kind of a bit of a niche way to play a game, playing it on your mobile phone or playing it on a tablet, especially when it's a game that's built primarily for the big screens or for a computer monitor. So I'm not having a knock at them at all, but it works so much better. If you are looking to play this game and you can hook it up to your TV or a PC monitor, then do that. I would absolutely suggest avoiding trying to play it on a mobile phone or a tablet, because it's just a bit of an unplayable mess in my experience and my perception and how I play games. But once you get on the big screen, things look a lot sharper, everything looks a little bit more clear. Combat doesn't feel quite as busy because you have so much more screen real estate, and it's a lot more playable. User interface is fantastic, it's easy to navigate, controller works really well with it, and I have no complaints when it comes to the big screen TV. The fact I'm sat further away as well makes that field of view feel a little bit less nauseating. It's a pain if you're playing it on PC with like a keyboard and mouse and you're up close to your monitor. It definitely feels too zoomed in, and I wish there was a field of view slider, but apparently in 2021 some games companies don't offer that, so yeah, that's a bit of a pain. However, the best way to play this game if you're going to be playing it on Google Stadia is on the big screen, and that's where it really shines. It looks good, 30 frames per second is a bit of a shame, but like I said, it's not quite as noticeable as I was expecting it to be. And all in all, it's a much better experience on the big screen. So to sum up, would we recommend playing Far Cry 6 on Google Stadia? And I would absolutely categorically say no. And you know, I'm probably going to get a lot of haters in the comments about that, but although the game itself seems really good, it seems relatively fun, it's got that Ubisoft formula where you unlock different places as you go, you collect all your different weapons, you meet different people, and yeah, if you've played Far Cry beforehand, you've played Far Cry 6 and it's just got a new skin on it. Looks really good. It feels distinctly last gen on Google Stadia, but at the end of the day, that's not the reason why we come across to cloud gaming. For me, at least, and I know a lot of you, when we've done the votes and the polls and in the comments, have all spoken about the fact that you come to cloud gaming because you want to be able to play on a mobile phone or you want to be able to play on a tablet. It's a great way to be able to kind of subsidize the way you're gaming, so that way if you've got kids or if you've got a busy lifestyle, you'll be able to pick up a games controller, slap it on a phone, and play some of those games and don't get hunkered behind a desk or at the big screen TV. And when it comes to Far Cry 6, it just does not work particularly well when it comes to a mobile phone or a tablet. It's just too small of a screen, and that blurring of the background or anything that's not in the immediate foreground just makes it such a messy and busy game, just makes combat very, very difficult. At the end of the day, if you've got the patience and you really want to play this game, then wait for it to go on sale, because it will go on sale. It's just inevitable. Or sign up for the Ubisoft Plus subscription, because that way you can play it on Google Stadia and then you can pick it up and play it on another platform. By the way, whilst we're on the subject of other platforms, it also doesn't support crossplay, which is again really frustrating. So if I wanted to be able to play this and Liam was going to pick it up on PC, we wouldn't be able to play co-op together, which is really annoying, especially since Ubisoft did say that pretty much all of their games coming forward would have crossplay support. So no idea what happened there. So that's it for our review of Far Cry 6. All in all, it seems like a really good game. It's definitely a lot of fun stuff under there. And when you're playing it on the big screen TV, and if that's the way you intend to play it with Google Stadia, then it's probably worthwhile looking at. However, if you're like the vast majority of cloud gamers, and from everybody in the comments who's spoken about this in the past, and you do want to be able to play it on a tablet or a mobile phone to kind of get that gaming in as and when you can, it's not a great experience. Now, that may differ depending on your perception of things like field of view, frames per second, and ultimately you might have a better setup where you're getting better graphics, but ultimately this is the first time I've seen it in a game on Google Stadia where that background is so out of focus, and because it's a busy game when it comes to combat, it just makes it really, really difficult to follow what the hell is going on. So let us know in the comments, have you been playing Far Cry 6 on Google Stadia? What are your thoughts? And have you been playing it on any of the other platforms as well? Because we're hearing lots of mixed bags when it comes to things like GeForce Now, and the fact that it looks good, that it's not a consistent 30 to 60 frames per second. Apparently there's a lot of spikes where it kind of jumps up to 60, then drops all the way back down. So just seems a bit of a nuisance all over the place at the moment. So be interested to hear your experience as well. Again, this is one of the first sort of Google Stadia game reviews that we've been doing. So let us know, is there anything else that you'd like to see in these game reviews? Anything that you'd like us to really focus on when it comes to performance of cloud gaming? Let us know in the comments and we can take that away and build that into future videos. But yeah, that's Far Cry 6. Seems like a decent game, great on the big screen TV, pretty awful when it comes to a tablet or a mobile phone. But overall, yeah, just a bit of a mixed bag. We'll see you next time, and in the meantime, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you soon. Bye.